November, that first Wednesday in November for that thing, okay? All right, just a little bit of review. We've talked about the precedence of Scripture, the purpose of serving the last couple of weeks. We talked about the significance about increasingly how many people think it's inappropriate to talk about their faith, when in when the irony is the cultural perception is it's inappropriate to talk about your faith when the same numbers of people want to hear about faith. So one of those two things doesn't work, all right? And so we're betting that the former is the one that doesn't work. We're taking advantage of the opportunity that more and more people want to hear. Especially more and more people will accept that invitation if you invite them to come to church, okay? The top 3 requests of your neighbors were to listen without judgment, allow them to draw their own conclusions, and be confident when you do share, okay? The number one thing people are looking for is a friend. They're looking for a friend who will live the good news, be the good news, and share the good news in the form of their own story. It's important in that quip to notice that not one thing that you need to live, be, and share is about quoting Scripture. Okay? Not yet, anyway. Not yet. In the beginning, they just want to see Jesus in you rather than read Jesus on a report, if that makes sense, okay? For all those things. This is the significance, all right? Sarah, real quick addition, we won't meet next week. There'll be a worship night next week. That's next Wednesday, so we'll meet on the 5th.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So, that's the number one thing. All right, then we had the example of Jesus, the principle of example in Matthew chapter 4, the principle of the return on the investment. Remember, that's the story that's Jesus' story of the lost sheep from Luke chapter 15, where it doesn't make sense for the shepherd to put himself at risk for one when he's got 99, but the return on the investment is worth it when it says there's more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents. More rejoicing than for the 99 that are still there. All right, that's the return on the investment. Okay. Then there's the principle of whatever it takes. Paul says, "I've become all things to all people, that by all possible means I might save some." We do whatever it takes short of sin. Remember that. Whatever it takes short of sin. Okay. Then there's the principle of suffering. That in a world where Jesus says, you will have trouble, you will have difficulty. In a world where it says, no, you need to ignore God. You need to go with what the world says. And when we don't go with what the world says, we ignore God, there's trouble in that. And people will say, well, why are you doing that? And that's part of because I have hope. I have a hope that God is going to keep his promises. And he's going to keep some of them in my lifetime. And Peter says, always be prepared to give an answer for the hope, but do this with gentleness and respect. Okay? That's the principle of suffering. Then there's the principle of agency. Paul tells the church at Corinth in his second letter, this is because God's making his appeal through us. The creator of the universe uses broken people to get his perfect message apart. Okay? The principle of agency. Then lastly, the principle of command. Jesus says, I want you to go do this. I want you to be witnesses of what my life has done in your life. Okay? That's the context there. Then we talked about the principle of serving last week. Okay? What was the key word? There's one key word. What's the key word that we talked about last week? I'm making this up, but let's just randomly see if we can land on the key word. What's the key? Pardon?
Bless.
I'm sorry, did you get that?
Bless.
B-L-E. Oh, okay, that's one key word. That's right. I'm sorry.
Shout it out.
I just heard.
It's me, I'm
probably
sure.
Clean them out. The key word I was thinking of was availability. Availability. That you will go where God sends you. You will do what God asks. You will follow where he leads. It's just to make yourself available. Okay, God, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to divide you up here in just a minute. I'm going to divide you up. And when I do that, I'm literally going to try and intentionally put you with people that you've never talked to with before. All right? Intentionally. Because I want us to eventually be comfortable in being uncomfortable. Okay? It's kind of like jumping into an ice pool.
Never gonna happen.
All right? Never say never. Never say never.
Don't challenge him.
Yeah. It's good. And after a while, you go, you know what? It's not fun, but it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it'd be worse.
There are a lot more things. There are a lot more things that could be wrong. You could be in that ice bath with a polar bear. All right. A lot more things that could be wrong with that. All right. So the principle of availability is in the sentence daily making yourself available to God. Daily making yourself available to God. And here's the when we talk like that, your prayer ought to be something along the lines of, God, whatever you need today, use it. And here, God doesn't. I want to say this the right way so you understand the concept. Most of the time, God doesn't necessarily send you out of your way. Most of the time. Most of the time, He already knows where you're going to be, and He orchestrates those things. All right? Because sometimes we have this perspective that if we say, I'm willing to do whatever you want, God, you will send me to the Arctic. All right? No, God's not going to send you to the Arctic, but you have to be willing to go. You see what I'm saying? All right? God, I don't want to go to a Kansas City Chiefs football game.
Oh.
I don't want to go, but you got to be willing. All right? God, I don't necessarily want to talk to the person at work that drives me crazy. No, but you got to be willing. All right? And what ends up happening 97 times out of 100 is you're talking to people that you know anyway, that you feel comfortable with. You're not going to the Arctic. You're going to Pelham. All right? You understand what I'm saying? He ends up orchestrating things that are right within your lane anyway. So it's that willingness to daily make yourself available. While I'm on my way, I might as well serve. Okay, that's the perspective. The point of serving, live a life that creates room for the opportunities that God will put in your way. All right. And then we had the acronym of BLESS. Begin with prayer, listen, eat, serve, and your story. Okay. Now, in just a few minutes, we're gonna separate into pairs. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfect. All right. Wayne, you and I will talk to each other. All right. Oh, everybody wave at everybody in Taiwan. Tell Taiwan. By the way, they're watching at 6:30 tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
All right. So they're up really early, or unless you drink your coffee. All right. Enjoy that. So what we're going to do is we're going to match up men with men, women with women, people you don't know. All right. So I'm going to be pulling and stringing. I'm just going to pair. And the whole point, you're going to have a minimum of 10 minutes. Each person will have a minimum of 10 minutes. Now that's 10 minutes in the pairs. That's 10 minutes to talk and 10 minutes to listen, and then we'll flip it. 10 minutes to talk, 10 minutes to listen. Now, in the beginning, I'm not going to tell you where you ought to start in your story. I just want you to tell your story.
Okay.
That's it. I just want you to tell your story. The more comfortable we get, you will know because you've been rehearsing your story. You've been writing it. You've been reviewing it. And we took the big story last week and we went down to 20% of before, 20% when you met Jesus, and 60% after. You reformed that around there. And you'll know where to pick up. You'll know whether when you're talking to somebody what to compare your life with theirs before you met, or to compare your life with theirs since they met Jesus. All right? Not everybody you talk excuse me. Not everybody you talk to will be excuse me, not everybody you talk to will be ambivalent to Jesus. Some people really want to go back to church. They just are afraid to go back because they haven't been there for 25 years. So you're just gonna pick up where God left off. And that's, you understand what I'm saying? So you'll be able to adapt. Adaptation is the believer's best opportunity. All right? And adaptation is best applied after you've listened. That's the significance, okay? So I'm going to pair you up. And then we're gonna 10 minutes each, and then I'll just whistle, knock it off, and then it doesn't matter where you are. Then we'll flip, and then we'll review. We'll come back to our chairs, and we'll review about what that's all about. Okay? All right. Before we do that, some things I want to share with you. All right. Just a few reasons from that book, Blessed. Just a few reasons of why we might be reluctant to share our stories. I'll give you a little primer as to where we're headed and why. Sarah, did you ever have the opportunity to go through SEER school?
I did not, but I know people who have.
Yes, yeah, okay. SEER school is a school that we send some very unfortunate guys to go through.
Unfortunate.
And so I went in September of 1987. It's a school that came as a development of guys who were in World War II. In World War II, guys were told, if you're captured, you give up nothing. You say nothing. The only thing you're allowed to say is name, rank, and serial number. Well, here's the reality. If somebody wants information, they're going to get it. They're going to get it. And so after that, and especially after Vietnam, what we told our guys was, okay, what we want you to do is resist as long as you possibly can. And then after you resist as long as you possibly can, then you give up as little information as possible. Okay? And if you can, develop a story in your mind that's completely off kilter from what you actually do, what you actually know. And if you develop the story long enough, you can lie to the guys, right? And make it believable. One guy literally convinced in Vietnam. One sailor convinced the Vietnamese that he took care of the pool on board the carrier. That was his job before he went in, and so he just described taking care of the pool on the carrier. Got away with it. And why am I telling you this story? Why am I going sideways on this? Because one of the things you go through in SEER school is you go through interrogation techniques, soft and hard. And the reason why you go through it is they realize that if you know what's coming, you're better prepared. If you know how they're going to talk to you, then you're more prepared when they flip the switch. If you know the pressure points they're going to use, it doesn't mean you're going to withstand it all, but you'll withstand more. Okay? That's why we're doing. I'm not going to send you to SEER school, don't worry. We're going to work, but if you know what's coming, you're better prepared. If you know when to listen, you'll be better. If you know when to interject, you'll be better. Because you've already got your story prepared. You've already got your responses ready to go. And then as you're listening, you're thinking to yourself, I was going to go here, but now I'm going to go there. All right? You'll be prepared. That's why we do these labs. That's why we do this. And next week, I'll give you some more things to think about. Now, this is going to sound, I don't want you to, I want you to think of this as little as possible as a project. I want you to think as much as possible of preparation. And that's where, remember, the be and bless is begin with prayer. Always begin with prayer. God, I want to do this the right way. God, I think it was, I was talking to Bomi afterwards last week, and she said, the last thing I want to do is blow it. Okay? You're not going to blow it. Unless you punch him. Okay? All right? Don't do that. You're not going to blow it. God doesn't send you into a place to embarrass yourself and Him. He doesn't do that. He provides everything you need in the moment that you need that. That's the reality, okay? So, in part of this preparation, I want to give you 3 of the most common reasons why people say they can't share their story. 3 of the most common reasons why people say they can't share their story. Number 1, I don't have what it takes. All right? I don't have what it takes. There's an ever-present fear that someone's going to ask you a question about God, about Jesus, about a part of the Bible, about life in general, that you're not going to have the answer to. Guess what? That happens to me every single week. And I've been doing this for nearly 40 years. All right? Happens to me every single week. Yeah, go.
I was witnessing to my neighbor this summer. He's in his 30s, and the whole time he had his cell phone out.
Yeah,
And he's checking everything I was saying.
that's exactly right. That's okay. That's all right. It can be, oh, listen, that happens on Sunday mornings while I'm talking. You know, there are people Googling half of the illustrations that I throw out there. That's why I realize I better not be making any of this stuff up, you know? They're Googling all the time. It just is what it is. Okay, so, but see, that's where your story, it's your story.
Right.
Unless you were on the news, they can't Google you. You see what I'm saying? That's why your story, you will never have all the answers. You will never have all the answers. What do you always have?
Jesus.
The Spirit of God. Jesus says this in Matthew chapter 10. When he sends the guys out, in Matthew chapter 10, he says, don't worry about what to say or how to say it. At that time, Matthew chapter 10, verses 19 to 20. Don't worry about to say or how to say it. At that time, you will be given what to say, for it will not be you speaking, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. All right? Now, I'm gonna give you a little behind the scenes understanding of just how common that is. The message I gave on Sunday about faith, it's not the first time I've done this, but I basically hit select all on my pages file and then hit delete about 1 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. Because nothing was coming together. Nothing was coming together. And I went back and I just said, okay, all right. So about 4 o'clock. Oh. And you know what my favorite friend is now? If you on pages, when you can dictate, verbally dictate, I can start doing that. I can write a whole lot faster when I dictate than I can typing, because my typing is terrible. And then I'm putting this stuff together and I'm going, hey, that sounds pretty good. That sounds pretty good. And I'm thinking, that's not me. You see what I'm saying? All right, God, none of this is coming together right now. I don't know what's going on. My brain is like oatmeal. I just need help. 4 o'clock. Doesn't happen all the time, but it happens semi-frequently. All right, just gotta dump it all and start from scratch, and because nothing's working. And sometimes that's what the spirits. Remember, this is not about you or me. This is not about you looking good or me looking good. This is about Jesus looking good. And that's why Jesus says, don't worry about what you're going to say. You're not going to have to. The words will be given to you. I'm just telling you, it happens. It happens it happened to me on Saturday night. It just works, okay? It will not be you speaking, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. I don't have what it takes. You don't need that. All right? That's a downstream application of what I was talking about. Saying you don't necessarily need to have powerful faith as if the powerful faith comes from something inside yourself. You need to have faith in the one who has power. Okay? That's the context of all of that. All right, so that's number one. We're reluctant to share our story because we don't think we have what it takes. Number two, we're reluctant to share our story because you don't want to impose your beliefs on your family or your friends. I don't share my story because I don't want to impose my beliefs on my family and my friends. I'm gonna get on a little soapbox, a little pulpit, so to speak. This is why we talk to our kids about our faith. Because somebody's gonna teach them. Somebody's gonna teach them something. They're gonna teach them something. And it really needs to be mom and dad saying, this is why, honey, this is why we love Jesus. This is why we obey God. This is why this matters. Okay? Somebody is going to be doing the influencing, and somebody's going to be the one being influenced in this world. Every single. That's why you can't go to one page on a website without having 17 ads pop up while you're trying to read the story. Right? Because while you were talking with your spouse, while you're looking at the thing, your spouse is talking about shoes, and while you're going through the thing, in comes 7 ads about shoes. Right? They're trying to influence. Right? So who's going to influence whom? That's the point of all that, all right? I don't want to impose my beliefs. People, that may be the wrong word, and I don't want to use that word, but people try to force their way in all the time. You know, when they haven't been invited. I used tables illustratively of the world that we live in, and maybe some of you have heard the illustration that I talk about, the table of influence. Okay, and every one of us has a table of influence, and there are all different kinds of chairs, and I give 4 different examples of chairs: people who sharpen you, people who deepen you, people who bless you, people who make you laugh. Who are the people that sit at your table that you really can't sit next to them at a funeral because you'll start laughing? Right? Is there one person in your life that's like, I can't sit with him. All right, we'll get in trouble. That kind of a thing. Everybody needs those people in your life. There's also people that pull a chair up to your table that were never invited. And they influence you. So this is the principle of influence. And there are times when people want to hear what you have to say, and then there are times when you don't. That's why Peter says, but do give your answer. Remember, you were asked. So oftentimes you're going to be invited to share your story. That's the whole point about this, all right? Here's a quote from one author, D.T. Niles. He says, Christianity, this is what he says, he sums up Christianity so eloquently, and I don't necessarily mean with flowery language, I mean in brevity. He says, Christianity is one beggar telling another beggar where he found bread. I like that. One beggar telling another beggar where he found bread. Remember, the definition of the gospel is good news. Rarely is good news inappropriate to share. Rarely is good news an inappropriate item to share. You got to read the room, right? If somebody's pretty somber and they're pretty broken up, hey, I got the best news ever. Well, wait a minute, right? We got to be really good at reading the room. But the definition of the gospel is, if you believe you have good news for someone, why wouldn't you share that news? Why wouldn't you? There's a time and a place. And that's why we begin everything with prayer. God, if the time is right and the place is right, give me the right words and the right way to say those words. Okay? All those things. Why wouldn't you share it? Romans chapter 10 says this, how can they call on the one they have not believed in? And how can they believe in the one whom they have not heard? And how can they hear without someone preaching to them? And how can anyone preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. Romans chapter 10, verses 14 and 15. All right? Someone's got, and that's why I asked you, what was the first question on the paper? What was the first question I asked you guys to think about? Anybody remember? First question.
The first person to tell you.
Who is the first person to tell you about Jesus? All right? It's entirely possible that none of you would be here if it wasn't for that person. The possibility exists that it wasn't for that person, whomever that happened to be in your life. It's entirely possible that you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for somebody that was sent by God, who heard the message, who understood that who heard the first thing about Jesus. They heard about Jesus, so they told the good news to somebody else about Jesus. All right? I don't want to impose no. You don't. You're not imposing anything. You're sharing good news. You're reading the room. You're sharing good news at the time that God ordains and sets up. All those things, okay? So, excuse me, we're reluctant to share our stories because we don't believe we have what it takes, and we're reluctant to share our story because we don't want to impose our beliefs on our friends or family. And thirdly, we're reluctant to share our stories because sharing our story makes us feel uncomfortable. Makes us feel uncomfortable. The more you share your story, the less uncomfortable you will be. That's why I wanted you to write it over and over and over again. Okay? Did I talk? Go ahead.
I'll just say some of the most impactful testimonies I heard were the most honest.
That's correct. That's correct. That which is most personal is most universal. It may not be the identical pain, but it can be similar pain. It may not be an identical experience, it can be a similar experience. There's probably no one in this room that hasn't gone through pain. And in some cases, very deep pain. But God has a way. The scriptures are replete with examples. There's a song. He turns graves into gardens. He turns what? Bones into bodies. Beauty from the ashes. All right? All those things. That's what God does. What Satan meant for evil, God turns around and makes it into good. That's from the story of Joseph. Right? In Genesis, in Genesis. Now, we're going to talk about this, and this is one of the things I want you're going to learn. How many of you were here a couple of weekends ago when my sister-in-law was at the women's gathering, when my sister-in-law was there? Okay, my sister-in-law and my wife are so similar. My brother-in-law was a Marine Corps pilot. We both look at each other when they're walking in the store. We went up to after the weekend on Monday and Tuesday. We took a couple days and we went up and went on the tram at Cannon Mountain. And you go on the big tram and you're just sitting right there, and Jeff and I are just kind of leaning back. We're just doing this, and Jeff will go, "Oh, that's cool," and I'll go, "Yep," and we're good. And Leslie and Leanne go, "Oh, look at that! Oh, look at that! Oh, look at that!" And the guy says, "You guys from here?" "No, I'm from Tennessee. I've been living there for 25 years. This is my address, and my home phone number is little." I'm like, "What?" And we jokingly say that our wives could never hold security clearances, ever, ever. And just talks about. Now, why do I tell that story? Because sometimes you'll be tempted to say more than you need to. So. I can't recall. Have I shared with you that I know I've shared this with some of you, but have I shared with you what's called the triangle of authenticity? Have I shared that with you? Okay. Let me give this to you, and I want you to use this as a principle, not just for telling your story, but for just being careful. Triangle of authenticity. Okay, every relationship you have can be put into the triangle of authenticity. Okay, every relationship you have. All right? The overwhelming majority of our relationships are not personal. They're circumstantial, whatever. Casual, bumping people in the street. Even your next door neighbors could be considered like this. The teachers of your kids, those kinds of things, all right? In every conversation, we deal honestly with people. All right? In every conversation, we deal honestly with people, with honesty. We don't tell them our life story like Leangela and Leslie did. Okay? We don't tell them our life story. But if they ask questions, we're honest. We're not devious. We're not scheming. We're certainly not lying. But you don't have to say everything. But you're honest. Okay? Some of the relationships that you have, you're transparent. You're a little bit more honest. You might give some more details. You might share why you're having difficulty. Those kind of things. Very important. There are just a few relationships that you have. And when I say a few, I'm talking about this much or less. You're vulnerable. You're vulnerable. Why so few?
Trust.
Go ahead.
Trust.
What about trust?
We have to trust that person with what it is.
Why do you have, I love the way you said that. You said you have to trust that person. Why do you have to trust that person?
Because you're telling them something that's pretty
They could use against you.
Yeah, exactly.
Or gossip.
Yeah.
Gossip.
And the problem is, in our world, with social media, we've done this upside down.
Yeah.
This is honest. This is transparent, and this is vulnerable. Ever read a post online where somebody's talking about their divorce on Facebook? There's a couple people at church that have done that. Not here, and I mean that, not here. A couple people I know from church, I call them, what are you doing? Well, you don't understand. Yes, I do. Nothing good will come from this. Nothing good. All right? That's why those few relationships, I'm talking maybe 3, 4, 5 at the most, those are like the old adage, you don't get a second chance to make lifelong relationships. Right? That kind of a perspective. Why? Because you're only 60 once, if you will, right? And if you've known somebody for 60 years and they've known you for 60, there's some value there. They know your story. But they're really just a few people. Now, Shan, that's great. Do I ever get vulnerable when I share my story? Should you get vulnerable when you're sharing your story? You're going to love this answer. It depends. You can talk about something vulnerable. You don't have to tell the whole story. That happened to me once can be enough.
I always say, so you don't always have to say the gory details.
That's exactly right. You don't even have to say the gore, let alone the details. Okay? You don't have to say all these things. People are going to know. They're going to read. They're going to read the context very, very quickly. They're going to read the look on your face. They're going to, even just in some of the details, you can say, yeah, I understand chemo. All right? And sometimes all you have to say is, went through it twice. Watch my mom. That's it. You don't have to go through, you don't have to go, because there's discipline in this. Because ultimately, remember, sharing your story isn't necessarily or only about sharing your story. It's about sharing your story to get to a conversation about Jesus. And what you want to do is use as much of your story as is necessary. And after that, let the Spirit take over the rest. Does that make sense? All right.
How do you know that, though?
Pardon?
How do you know that?
when you walk through that, sometimes it's difficult. So there are more than a few occasions where I walk away going, oh, I spilled way too much.
Yep.
More than a few occasions. When I think sometimes I'll replay the conversation in my head and I'll go, you know what? I could have said that in 3 sentences and still had the same effect. That's why we're practicing. That's why we go through that. Okay? We can get efficient in our conversation. All right? Now, I was picking on my wife and my sister-in-law. The blessing is they can talk to anybody. All right? And some people are just fine around this area. They don't care. All right? It's not gory details, it's just stuff. It's not like somebody's in the back of the tram recording. Are you with me on that? Okay? It's just talk. It's just talk. But guard this very carefully. Guard this very carefully. Most of the time, you don't need to go there. All right? You don't. But you might sometimes. I had a young girl, 18, freshman in Bible college. Her mom called me one morning. She said, are you in the office? I said, yeah. She said, I'm coming by. I said, what's up? She said, you'll know. She and her husband and their daughter walked in, and as soon as I saw the look on her face, I knew she was pregnant. As soon as I saw the look on her face. Her mom and dad were convinced they needed to leave the church. Her mom and dad were convinced that her life was over. They'd never been through anything like this before. And at the time, you got to realize that this part of the triangle, right now, it was right here. Right there. But in their world, it might as well have been all of this. Are you with me? It might as well have been all that. So, they're telling me the story. And I just said, guys, I know this is not what you expected, but this is not the end. It's not the end. Your dad got really mad at me. Really mad at me. Because he was vulnerable. I was trying to read the room. And I rolled the dice. So I said, all right, his name was Mark. I said, Mark, just wait a minute. I said, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to be insensitive, but let's just take a deep breath for a second. Wait a minute. The secretary was out in the hallway. I knew she was hearing the conversation because it was loud. And I had a glass door. And I said, her name was Trish. I said, Trish. I looked at her. She knew exactly, by the look on her face, I knew she knew what I was going to do. I said, tell him. She looked right at Brittany. She said, I was pregnant at 18. And the world did not end. Everybody started crying. I said, I'm not done yet. There's another woman working in the office. I said, tell her. I was pregnant when I was 18. And the world did not end. And God blessed me. I walked over. Sometimes, no, the gory details weren't there. But they were the ones that were vulnerable. The 2 women in church weren't. And I knew that. That's why I could rarely pull that card out. But in that moment, with just the 6 of us in the office, and the news was going to be there really soon anyway. All right? Sometimes those details help. But that's when you know. I can use this card today. It's the only time I've ever used that card. That's when you know. You'll know. You'll know when that happens, okay? Because sometimes sharing your story is uncomfortable, but the discomfort is not nearly as much as you think it's going to be. Fear plays a big part of this, guys. A big part of this. All right? It really, really does. Okay. So, let's go to our lab. Let's go to our lab. Can I get you and you to sit over at this table? Or just grab, actually what I want you to do is grab 2 chairs and seat a couple feet apart just so that you're facing each other. Okay? So, you and you and you and you and Denise, yeah, you two, okay, you two. You and you 2 men, you and Sarah. Okay, you, April. You'll come over here with Boney. You'll come over here. Don't start just yet. So sit right across from one another. And I want you to just imagine like you've got coffee cups in your. I love it. You guys are just shaking hands and just greeting each other for the first time. All right? Like you're getting a cup of coffee. You're meeting for the first time. Okay? Now, before we get going, listen. Before we get going. When I say go, you have 10, I don't care who starts first. One person listens, one person tells, okay? Start wherever, go wherever you want to, but this is an exercise, okay? And if you want to use your notes for your story, that's great. All right? Ready, and go. For those of you in Taiwan, if you want to do it online, you can do it online. You can share with each other via Zoom. Thank you so much.
Me too, you're not the only person.
因为现在呢，可以练习讲讲自己的故事，就是讲你很简单的讲讲你当初怎么样的事业是什么人告诉你关于这个每人讲一讲可以。
OK， 这个就可以讲话，刚刚那个是怎么讲话的？
就是跟你讲，就是每一个，就是讲一讲你怎么样的，就是当初怎么样的碰到，就是什么人告诉你，好吗？练习一下，行政在开车，你可以开始，你先讲。
我先讲。其实我从以前就已经陆陆续续都有在，其实就有人传给我，但我忍得很。很了解，应该可以说，所以其实就包括在大学也有大学的环境，但是我就是偶尔参加一会不是很熟，而且我觉得怎么跟我的传统是感觉不一样的，对。然后我毕业后，我那时候到澳洲就去旅行了1年，然后有一个从英国来的姐妹，她其实是去澳洲读书，其实她已经是等于是是医生啊，其实她是医生，然后就是去那边做自己的研究，然后我问她是怎么认识的，她就说她跟我反正我们就聊 天，然后后来他就说，我带你去一家咖啡厅，我要跟你讲耶稣。他说好，然后我就跟他去，然后他就跟我讲，然后他就带我去，然后我就觉得，哎，怎么这么奇妙？我就相信他跟我讲的话。然后那时候我有去奥雅教会，之后我就去了奥雅教会，然后就奥雅教会的一些弟兄姐妹跟我聊，然后就是在那边，因为我在那一带的讲经验，然后在这中间刚好有皮，然后刚好牧师也跟我聊过，说你确定你要讲什么？你要自己心里很确认的，然后我就说我相信，所以我就在那边休息。对。
你开始的说首先你还没有把这个朋友还没有外之前，你说
我在大学的时候其实会参加
对，
团契。
但是你说为什么跟我传统的思维一样是传统思维是什么？
我觉得他就是跟道教一起，宗教道教，
就是台湾的传统是
对，在在一起团契的时候，他就一直在唱歌啊，就是赞美神、祷告，真的，我觉得我当时我很没有办法融入他们，对，就是那时候我印象很深刻，特别是我那时候遇到921然后很严重，然后还有就是很近的教会里面的牧师，他就把人带去教会里面，对，虽然我们学校里面而且我们是学校在比较相对安全的地方，然后那时候我们就在教会里面，就是一些朋友有团契的朋友，就一起在教会里面，然后牧师就有看那个见证的影片，对，所以其实那时候其实开始认识，可是我那时候我真的不懂所以他们一直常常做的牧师都一直在祷告，围在一起祷告。其实我有一点点不懂，然后我觉得很奇怪，因为他们教我，他们不懂为什么他们一直在祷告。所以我印象超深刻。可是因为毕业之后，那时候毕业之后就没有再又到了各地，我也没有再可以就是带我自己的东西，所以其实我就走转。
我记得我以前的很久以前，我还在上就是挺多个在台湾的来到香港的传道人，这个是方面传递工作。在台湾帮助我他平安的事业是除了刚才牧师只是谁来搞他们是每天去拜拜的。就是他也是跟他的教育一样，什么都没有讲啊，就是不要影响，因为不要事业的，就是不要麻烦。有一天他说，突然间他看到有一个偶像，对吗？他拜拜有偶像，他说为什么我要拜你呢？我又不认识你，也不认识你，他就觉得奇怪，于是他就跟着去教堂去听福音了。原来有一个耶稣，他真正的来到这个世界，就是好像跟他所拜的很不同了。说到就是是耶稣就是跟这个人类发生的很多人的关系就不如你们办法，他是开始去听之后来的事。
所 觉得后来有让我更惊讶一个发现，就是因为当我开始发现我的东西在信仰上的成长的时候，我觉得你的信心就会有一点在你的感受上，对，然后你就会觉得说，我相信，我真的相信神，我相信你会照顾我，我相信你的真理，对的，这是唯一的准则。
所以在譬如说，就是所以你他不是基督徒，是现在在听到你是这样经验是，所以你有什么东西想问他去问？是啊，你像人传福音，人家不是听了就啊好啊好啊，这样的，他会掐人的，对吧？
我常常也会想，我们现在团契的我要怎么回答呢？
华人很多都是为什么能够去拍偶像？
By the time I was 4 years old, he sentences that my dad was known, my mom said I was born to and I was back to flat on her way.
对，你再讲一下你那个是断断续续，我听到断断续续。
我说你为什么会崇拜偶像、拜偶
就是你自己去拜他啊，拜偶像他到了过年的时候就放假去了，还有你要拿东西去拜他，为什么你要拿东西去拜你？你为什么不能？我觉得我在跟他一起交换，我就已经不 OK 了，你还要叫我拿东西去拜你？对啊。
闺女，如果是你的妈妈听到这样，她会不认了。
Okay.
妈妈不是。
Okay. Lots to talk about for the first group. Okay. Ready? And listener now becomes the talker now becomes the listener. And flip. Go.
所以就是闺女的时间。
那我想
有一点断断续续，刚刚现在好一点。
其实我是从小就读教会的学校，但是那个时候其实而且我觉得我学到没有讲很多耶稣的故事，主要是教那种 moral teaching。很多都是 moral teaching，然后后来我去长大以后，我去英国读书，认识了一个朋友，他就带我去教会，但是那个时候还没有觉得要信，因为我的背景就是我爸妈妈，我家人都是嘛，然后后来在大学在大学就刚到的时候就什么人都不认识，然后就在信仰上面走，一直在走来走去的时候就从香港来的宣是approach我，说你是哪里来的？他是亚洲人。来的我是香港啊，然后过来原来他也是香港，然后他就跟我聊天，就邀请我去大学的华人团契，然后我就跟着他去，然后慢慢在一起。但是那个时候我觉得我还是没有 好要把一个人最低薪水而且我有去有时候没去，然后回头去找，真的是很忙，所以说很多时候就是因为呀又没有去教堂啊，然后那个时候觉得这是伤心的事情，要想我要受伤，但是我不知道为什么我妈妈很好我她说这个很严重的，不能休息，要想清楚，不可以。然后就，然后后来我就也又没有去当，我越来越离开神，觉得自己对神有那种，觉得哎我的人我又不去教堂，又去敬拜，好像有一种，他有朋友邀请我的时候，我就觉得，不去了，就提前不去。过几年之后我又来到美国，我觉得要我真的找一个很安静的地方，这个是我的感觉。我来到美国，我觉得我生活真的，然后我就觉得有点无聊，就真的去看，就是每天都看圣经，然后我就跟神说，我就说，如果你是真的是神，你就帮我去相信，帮我去靠近你。后来我以前的我前就跟我说，哎，你在家里做华人的朋友，觉得你应该要认识一些华人的朋友，跟你一样的，然后你就会自己有自己的朋友圈，然后他帮我找到我开始没有关，我就开始相信，然后收集，然后再慢慢走到现在差不多20年。有没有问题？哦，其实你们大家都知道我是婚姻的状况，我觉得那个当时觉得很痛苦，但是现在回想一下，也把我拉得更近一件事情。
然后有什么
你有什么证明神是存在的？你为什么要相信？
很多哎，有时候我很喜欢去拍照，因为我是一个很相信创造主，我就觉得每一件事情它的房子是我后面没有创造的，还有而且看到很漂亮的地方的时候，我就觉得真的，我会觉得背后一定是有神。大问啊，什么问题？我其实儿子也有一个个人的经历。大学的时候，我大学1年级的时候，我 不是单纯，我觉得我的房间口比较我觉得那个房间里真的是很，我觉得他鬼真的超多。那到时候，然后我告诉我的朋友爸爸妈妈，他们都说，哎，因为每次都是家里大可以。他觉得我睡觉的时候有东西在压着我。后来我就也是因为开始打发，我是觉得真的在身边里面其实太常鬼了，你都帮我挡鬼。那鬼身后真的是走了，这个是对，真的我觉得就是很爱的，就是很正常的方式，他会去
我想要 challenge 王律师，因为这是我那时候要回来台湾的时候，其实我是想要跟我的是 local 的同事，因为他刚好要遇到很顺利的事，我要跟他介绍这件事，结果他回答我不知道我要怎么样跟他谈。其实我们学校上面有一个小小的庙，就是炎帝皇帝那个炎黄子孙那个小小的庙，在学校里面的某一栋大楼的门边，然后他就跟我讲说，他就去拜，说你为什么要去拜？他说他对自己的状况很不好，我就说那我介绍你主耶稣啊，然后他就说，那你要证明他是真的啊，他就说他不相信鬼神，我说那你既然不相信，你为什么要去拜那个？他就回答我说，大家都去拜，所以我跟着去拜啊。那我就说，那我介绍你主耶稣啊，你可以跟他祷告。那你跟我证明为什么有那个，你确定他存在啊？我怎么知道他存在？至少大家都去拜，我有看到大家都去拜，所以我跟着去拜。我讲不出来耶，我当下我没有办法跟他讲我的经历，因为我跟他讲我的经历，他觉得哦，那可能是幸存者偏差，就是哦刚好就那么巧，你刚好碰到，对，所以我不知道要怎么去跟他讲主耶稣，然后让他跟着我，而不是跟着一大票的人去那个我们的那个楼梯上去拜。
那你其实你跟他分享你的经历也是，就是这个故事，起码给他知道真理来说，就是这样。因为你
是我跟他分享经历，但他不觉得，他就说哦，那你只是刚好幸运，
如果是
Okay. Okay. 10 minutes goes by fast, doesn't it? Let's get back to our seats where we were. Go back to where we were. And then I got lots of questions to ask. Okay, quick flash poll. Fun, yes, no? Did you have enough time? No. 10 minutes seems to go by in about a 30-second session, doesn't it? Give me some feedback. What did it feel, when you were telling your story, did you feel like you were rushing? Did you feel like you were getting into details? What, just anybody speak up, give me an example, give me some feelings and some, yes, go.
I felt a little rushed, just doing a recap.
Okay.
Okay, without getting too seriously.
Right.
you know, like I told Mark, we're trying to recap, at least in my case, 75 years.
That's correct, that's correct.
And you can't do it in 10 minutes.
You can't.
Even
can't.
if you just skim the top.
Yeah. In some ways, it was unfair of me to ask you to do this, okay? Because what, this is such an open-ended question, and I know that I'm so guilty of asking this from time to time. What was missing in the exercise?
The trigger.
The contextual trigger, yes. Why are you telling the story? Other than the fact that I asked you to, why? Right? In any other circumstance, the trigger would allow you to say, okay, I'm not going to deal with 75 years, I'm going to deal with 7.5. You see? That changes everything. Now you can see the perspective, oh, wait a minute, I don't need to tell the whole story, I don't need to tell the gory details, all I need to do is say this. All I need to do, and sometimes I don't even have to tell my story, all I need to do is say, Trish, come in, tell her. Boom. You see? And you just, it's not sophisticated communications ideology. It's just people going, oh, that's what's going on. That's like when boom. That's just like my family who, boom. Right? It's really not difficult. You know what was really interesting? It took about 30 seconds, and I started watching you. And if you'll allow, well, it was kind of, in the beginning, your chairs were this far apart, and then they got a little bit closer, and then you leaned in. Okay, that's really good listening stuff. All right. Eyes to eyes, you know. Now, some of you were looking at your notes, but you look at your notes, lean in. Look at, some of you were laughing, and those of you who were listening were nodding. Okay? All those really critical, nonverbal affirmations, really, really important. Really, really important. You're able to do that and still think at the same time. You can. You can be focused on that. How many of you, I really couldn't tell in that, did anybody have the urge to speak up and interrupt the story? Yeah?
I didn't, but I had the urge.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Me too.
Yeah. Because sometimes you say, that's just like, I get it, I understand. And do your best to resist that. Do your best to resist that. And just say, now, I'm horrible in some contexts because I'm going, I know the answer to this question. I know the answer to this question. And you know what the problem is? Most of the time I do. That's a problem. Because that one time I thought I did and I don't, boom, blows up right in my face. Every single time. So I'm just gonna wait. I'm just gonna wait. It's okay. Now, my context is a little different. If I'm listening to somebody's story in my professional capacity, if you will, I have a notepad, and I'm just dotting one word, two word phrases. I'm doing that. But if it's much more a relational context, then I don't have a notepad. You know, I'll just try and remember markers. Sometimes I'll interrupt and say, "That's a really important point. I don't want you to stop, but let's come back to that." That kind of a thing. I'll use that interjection. Those kinds of things. But you really do get better. Any other observations that you had from telling your story?
It's very emotional.
It is. It is. There are parts of my life story I can't get through it. I can't. And that's the way it's supposed to be. All right. Any other observations?
Similarities?
Yes. The more personal, the more universal. Yes. All right, anything else? I want to give you a biblical example. Yeah, we've got about 10, 12 minutes left. I want to turn your Bibles to Acts chapter 22. This is an example of someone telling their story, but the person telling their story does not do 75 years, but really does an overview of much of his life very quickly, and then spends the majority. He does the opposite. I told you 20-20-60. He does 20-80, and there is no life after. And in other words, he does maybe 10 to 20% of life before Jesus. He does 80% about how he met Jesus, and he doesn't spend any time talking about what his life has been since. But it's the excuse me. It's the context that determines the ratio. It's the context that sets it up. In Acts chapter 22, Paul is before the Jewish leaders. They are furious with him because he is no longer the Jew they want him to be. He's a Christian. And so he adapts his story for the environment. Okay? He reminds everybody, let's read through this. Acts chapter 22, starting with the 3rd verse. Then Paul said, I am a Jew, born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city. I studied under Gamaliel and was thoroughly trained in the law of our ancestors. I was just as zealous for God as any of you are today. Excuse me. I persecuted the followers of this way to their death, arresting both men and women and throwing them into prison, as the high priest and all the council can testify themselves. I even obtained letters from them to their associates in Damascus and went there to bring these people as prisoners to Jerusalem to be punished. That's his life before Jesus. 3 verses. Verses 3, 4, and 5. That's it. Then we've got the rest. Verse 6, about noon, as I came near Damascus, suddenly a bright light from heaven flashed around me. I fell to the ground and heard a voice say to me, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Who are you, Lord? I asked. I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom you are persecuting, he replied. My companions saw the light, but did not understand the voice of him who was speaking to me. What shall I do, Lord? I asked. Get up, the Lord said, and go into Damascus. There you will be told all you've been assigned to do. My companions led me by the hand into Damascus because the brilliance of the light had blinded me. A man named Ananias came to see me. He was a devout observer of the law and highly respected by all the Jews living there. He stood beside me and said, Brother Saul, receive your sight. At that moment, I was able to see him. Verse 14, continuing on. Then he said, the God of our ancestors has chosen you to know his will and see the righteous one and hear words from his mouth. You will be his witnesses to all the people of what you have seen and heard. And what are you waiting for? Get up, be baptized, and wash your sins away, calling on his name. When I returned to Jerusalem, I was praying at the temple, and I fell into a trance and saw the Lord speaking to me. Quick, he said, leave Jerusalem immediately, because the people here will not accept your testimony about me. Lord, I replied, these people know that I went from one synagogue to another to imprison and beat those who believe in you. And when the blood of your martyr Stephen was shed, I stood there giving my approval and guarding the clothes of those who were killing him. Then the Lord said to me, go, I will send you far away to the Gentiles. All right. So basically you have probably 10% my life before Jesus and 80 to 90% of my how I met Jesus. When I gave you the thing 20-20-60, it's because I was speaking in generalities. The context changed the proportions. He was speaking to Jewish leaders. They know exactly what he's been doing since he met Jesus. That's why he's there having to testify before them. They don't know anything about how he met Jesus. That's why Paul spent all that time. Only that story. Now, none of them believe it, and the verses following, they want to put him to death right away. But only that story can explain how Saul went from imprisoning and killing believers to teaching them. and planting churches. Only that story can do that. You see? It's just one example of a few that it's not, I want you to understand, it's not necessarily always 2020. And you're gonna know. You're gonna know. Because the trigger, the contextual trigger, will give you this, oh, I don't need to tell my story about, because my friend already knows what I've been like before. They thought, my friend of 20 years knows what I've been like for a while, but they've forgotten what I really was, they have no idea what my history is before, 40 years ago. That's why. That's why I live the way that I do. That's why I do the thing. You adapt. All right, does that make sense to everybody? That's what you do. Now, next week, I'm gonna change, when we go through this, I'm gonna change the context a little bit. I'm gonna give you maybe 5 to 7 minutes to go through some things, and I'm gonna let you pick whatever you didn't get to before. Most of you, how many of you spent all your time on your life before Jesus? Okay, how many of you got to the point where you met Jesus? All of you did. Did everybody get to the life after Jesus? Okay, so I'll think about that. I'll pick one thing and we'll do it over again. But what we're going to do is I'm going to make sure that the pairs will be different next week. Okay, the pairs will be different. So you'll be telling the same story, but you'll be telling the same story to a different person. Okay, and I might instead of having the whole story, I'll just say I only want you to talk about how you met Jesus, kind of a thing. All right, that kind of a perspective. What this is going to do is just it's going to lower your discomfort level. Right? You're still going to. It's easy now because it's in a safe place. Okay, but most places are safe. Especially if the person that you're talking to, more often than not, asks you. They may not necessarily ask you about how you met Jesus. They may not necessarily ask you how you've been living as a believer, what your life is different. But they might ask you, how come you're in a good mood all the time? You see, that's the point I'm getting at. That's the point that I'm getting at. All right. Okay. All right.
Well, while you're on that point, maybe can I give
You sure
a
can.
short,
Go.
short testimony
Sure.
that
Hey,
well,
Wayne, why don't you stand up so the people who can see you, so you're not hidden behind the
yeah,
table.
and well, that was in 1982 or so. That I went to China, and actually at that time we smuggled Bible into China, and and I took a few people with me, and we've been we did not know anybody in that city. We do not know how the Lord going to lead us, to find somebody we can share, the gospel with. And at that time, China is still, very tight. And we just walk on the street, and I noticed there's a couple girls, just young ladies, kept following us. And we went up on the bus, and they also went up on the bus. And then we got off the bus, they also got off the bus. I just couldn't help it. I thought that, well, they might be spying on us, So I told the other guys, you guys just go ahead and continue, Actually, we didn't go back to our hotel. We just walk around because we thought that somebody, kind of
Right.
spying on us.
Yeah.
And then and I told them that, well, you guys just walk ahead, and I will just talk to these two ladies, okay? And so I stopped, and I turned around, and when that two ladies, well, actually I walked towards them, and said, hey, hi, I noticed that you ladies been following us, Why you do that? They said, oh, we're sorry. But they said, because, you talk about, happy all the time, because we saw you guys, you've been so happy all the time, and we just wonder why.
Yeah.
And so we just are following you guys and try to find out why, because, well, in those days, the China just, just a few years after the Cultural Revolution,
Right.
Yeah, and so that was our first 2 converts.
Wow.
To
Wow. Hey, listen, this coming Sunday, in the series in Life in the Red Letters, I'm interviewing Wing. You're gonna hear a lot more stories, some good, really good stories. We're gonna kind of meld what he went through recently in his trip to Taiwan and to China, and then we're gonna focus on what Jesus said about praying and fasting. And we're gonna talk about how praying and fasting has been a huge part of the ministry that Wing has had overseas. So just a little bit of a commercial. You'll see an ad on Facebook on that tomorrow. And I was gonna do it tomorrow. I was gonna do the ad this morning, but it was just a little wet outside to do the video. So we'll post it on Facebook and that. Okay. Any questions, comments, criticisms, or smart aleck remarks about tonight? Okay. Was the time to share like that, was that helpful? Okay, let me ask the harder question. Was it awkward at any point? Were there any parts that were difficult? Okay, why difficult?
Well, just because it made me cry, and I was so adamant I wasn't gonna cry.
Oh,
when I said it.
okay.
All right. Just
Okay.
the emotional piece.
The
of it.
emotional part that's right, okay. All right. So remember, this class will not meet next week. We'll have our worship, have a worship night. We'll celebrate with everybody downstairs next Wednesday, and then 2 weeks from tonight, we'll have our final class. I've got some things I want to give you, and some aids to having what you do to kind of, for lack of a better, I don't necessarily want to talk about this as sales, but in the context, how you close the deal. How you close the deal, and just a couple of simple tools to use, okay? All right, real quick, let's go around the horn. Anything to pray about?
My daughter.
Okay,
I'm gonna take one for myself today.
okay, all right,
Did
all
not
right.
speak.
Your father. Your past.
Children.
My daughter Kayla.
Children, daughter, okay, your daughter,
My niece.
your niece.
My mom, not my mom, a mom that I'm
Hey,
telling.
mom, okay.
Children.
My health.
Children.
Ex-son-in-law.
Yeah, Hannah's mom,
Yes,
we hope that she will accept Jesus.
okay,
Children.
Our children.
okay. Yeah. Let's pray. Lord, there's nothing that you don't know. There's nothing that escapes your eyes. You see and hear and know everything. God, you not only know our stories, you know how every single one of our stories will close. Father, you've heard the prayer requests. You know the circumstances, the people who are at the forefront of our hearts. God, thank you for loving us, and we pray that you will hear our prayers with respect to those that we mentioned, and that you will answer in accordance with your will, not just simply what we want, God, but we want what you want, because what you want is always best. It's always best. And so, God, thank you for the opportunity that we've had tonight to just begin to scratch the surface about what it means to proactively share our faith. Lord, help us to understand that it really is just great news that you love us and that Jesus gave his life for us. Bless us as we go tonight. Bring us back together energetically, wanting to worship you all together. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Good night, everyone.
Right.
Energy.